Snow fell like endless knives from the dark sky, each flake cutting against the skin of the alien woman as she stumbled through the empty streets. She was thin, her clothes torn, her arms wrapped tightly around the small child pressed to her chest. The little one shivered, making weak noises, his breath misting in the freezing air. Her legs trembled, and her steps dragged through the snow. Hunger clawed at her stomach. But worse than hunger was the cold. It was a merciless cold, the kind that stole strength, stole thought, and stole hope. Still, she could not give up, not with the child still alive in her arms. She reached the first door. It was a tall wooden door with warm light glowing behind its cracks. She knocked softly at first, then harder. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Please, help us, just for a night." For a moment, footsteps came close, but then silence. Then the light inside dimmed, and the sound of a bolt sliding into place echoed. The door had closed her out. Her heart dropped, but she moved on. The second door was smaller, the house old. She knocked again, begging, "My child is cold, he needs warmth." A face appeared at the window, eyes staring coldly at her before the curtain was pulled shut. The lock turned, another rejection. By the fifth door, her strength was nearly gone. Her lips had turned blue and her child's whimpers grew weaker. She knocked harder this time, desperation in every hit. "I beg you, I will work, I will clean, just let my child live," a harsh voice shouted from inside. "Go away, you don't belong here." Tears froze on her cheeks as she stumbled away. Her legs carried her to the 7th, 8th, 9th doors. Each time the same story, sometimes silence, sometimes cruel words, sometimes a face quickly disappearing. Each rejection pressed heavier on her heart, like stones stacked on her back. At the 12th door, she almost bowed. T collapsed. Her knees buckled as she leaned against the wall. The child coughed weakly, his body so light now it frightened her. She whispered to him, "Stay with me, little one, just a little longer." Her knuckles, bloody from knocking, still hit the wood. But again the only answer was rejection. 16 doors, 16 hearts that had turned her away. 16 homes that had warmth and fire, but none for her and her child. She dragged herself to the 17th door, her vision blurred. She could barely lift her hand. Her knock was more of a scrape, her voice almost gone. "Please, please, he is only a child." This time no one even came. Not a light flickered, not a step. The house was alive with warmth inside, but it was as if they did not hear her or pretended not to. She fell to her knees in the snow, her arms tightened around her child who barely stirred now. 17 doors, 17 rejections. The cold pressed in closer, whispering to her that this was the end. But still, her eyes lifted. Somewhere in her heart, a flicker remained. There was one more door ahead. The 18th, she whispered to herself through cracked lips. One more. Just one more. And with the last of her strength, she pushed herself up from the snow and moved toward the house at the end of the street, where a single dim light still burned. The woman's legs shook as she reached the last house. Her vision was clouded, the snow and tears mixing together until the world became nothing but blur and pain. The child in her arms gave a faint whimper, and that sound alone kept her moving. One more door, she told herself. If this one closed too, then perhaps fate had chosen their end. The 18th door was different. It was smaller than the others, its paint chipped, its porch light flickered weakly as if unsure whether to stay alive or burn out. The house itself looked tired, not rich or proud like the others. She pressed her trembling hand to the wood and knocked. The sound was soft, almost lost in the wind. She waited, heart pounding. At first, there was silence. Her chest sank, fearing the same rejection again. But then she heard it. Footsteps inside, slow, heavy. A shadow moved behind the thin curtain. The door opened with a creak. A human man stood there. His hair was messy, his clothes simple, his eyes widened at the sight of her. The alien mother wrapped in rags, her arms clutching the half-frozen child. Snow blew past her into his warm hallway. For a moment, neither spoke. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Please, just for my child. One night." Her knees almost buckled as she tried to bow, to show she meant no harm. She expected anger, disgust, or the door slammed like the others, but the man did not slam the door. His gaze moved to the child, the tiny creature whose skin had turned pale with cold. His jaw tightened. He hesitated only a heartbeat, then stepped aside and opened the door wider. "Come in," he said firmly. Her breath caught. She had to push herself to believe his words. Carefully, she stepped inside. The warmth hit her like a wave, making her body shake harder. The child whimpered softly, as if sensing safety for the first time. The man shut the door behind them, sealing out the sound. Torm, he guided her to the small fire burning in his hearth. The room was simple. Wooden walls, worn furniture, nothing like the grand homes that had rejected her. But to her, it felt like a palace. "Sit here," he told her, pulling a blanket from the back of a chair. He wrapped it around her shoulders, then gently placed another around the child. She stared at him, eyes wide, not understanding. Why would he help when so many had turned her away? He moved quickly, placing a pot over the fire. Soon the smell of warm broth filled the air. Her stomach growled loudly, her cheeks burning with shame. He noticed but said nothing, only ladled the steaming liquid into a wooden bowl. He handed it to her with quiet kindness. She took it with shaking hands. Her child's small lips touched the spoon first, sipping slowly. The warmth spread into the little body, and a faint sound escaped. The sound of relief, a small sigh. For the first time in days, the woman let out a trembling sob. The man sat across from her, his eyes steady. "You've been knocking on doors," he said quietly. It was not a question, but a truth he already knew. She lowered her gaze, unable to meet his eyes. 17. "All closed," she whispered. Her voice cracked like broken glass. He leaned back, exhaling slowly. His face carried no judgment, only a tired sadness. "Then this one will stay open," he said simply. Her chest tightened. She wanted to thank him, to explain, but words failed. All she could do was hold her child closer as tears streamed down her cheeks. For the first time since the long night began, she felt something she thought was gone forever. Not just warmth, not just shelter, but hope. And deep in her heart she wondered, why was this human different from all the others? The warmth of the fire wrapped around the alien woman like an embrace she had long forgotten. Her child, now covered in the blanket, lay quietly in her arms. The little one's eyes were half open, breathing soft but steady. The woman pressed her lips to the child's forehead, whispering a weak prayer of thanks. The human man moved silently around the small wooden home. He added more wood to the fire, checked the pot of broth, and laid out a few pieces of bread on the table. His movements were simple, but there was something steady, almost comforting in them. The woman sat stiffly near the fire. Her body wanted to relax, but her mind refused. She had been chased, rejected, and hated for as long as she remembered. To suddenly sit inside a human's shelter felt unreal, like a dream that might shatter if she closed her eyes. The man finally sat across from her, his hands resting on his knees. His eyes studied her carefully, not with hatred, but with quiet curiosity. "You're safe here," he said, his voice calm. "The storm will pass. You and your child can rest." Her throat tightened. Words clung stubbornly. Her people always told her never to trust humans. They were dangerous, selfish, heartless. Yet here was one, giving warmth when 17 others had denied her. She nodded slowly, but her fingers still gripped the child tightly. "Why?" she whispered at last. Her voice cracked. "Why help me? You don't know me, my kind. We are not welcome." The man did not answer immediately. He looked at the fire, its light dancing across his tired face. "Finally," he said softly, "because no child should freeze at my door." His words carried no weight of politics, no demand of repayment, only simple truth. Her eyes stung. She wanted to believe him, yet fear still gnawed at her heart. What if he wanted something later? What if kindness was only a mask? She lowered her gaze, hiding her doubt. The child stirred and made a small sound. The man leaned forward, his voice gentle. "Let me see him." She hesitated, clutching the child tighter. But something in his eyes, steady and warm, pushed her to loosen her grip. She allowed him to peek. The man's brows drew together. He touched the child's tiny hand. It was ice cold. He quickly stood and fetched a rag from the table, warmed it near the fire, and gently pressed it against the child's fingers. The woman watched every move, her body tense, but she saw the care in his actions. He was not cruel, not careless. The child whimpered but soon relaxed. The color of his skin began to return slowly. A soft sigh escaped the alien mother, her heart still guarded, but hope seeped in through the cracks. The man rose again, bringing a cup of warm milk. He placed it near her. "Drink." You need strength too." She stared at the cup, then at him. Suspicion lingered, but her shaking hands betrayed her hunger. She took a small sip and the warmth slid down her throat like fire chasing away ice. For a long time, silence filled the room, only the crackle of the fire and the soft breathing of the child. Yet in that silence, something grew. It was not trust, not yet, but the beginning of it. Finally, the man spoke again, his tone steady. "You can stay until the storm ends. No one will harm you here." The woman looked at him, truly looked this time. His face was worn, lined by years of hardship. His eyes, however, carried something rare, kindness without demand. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Thank you." The words felt strange, heavy, yet real, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to breathe. Inside these fragile walls, she had found more than a shelter from the storm. She had found a crack in the darkness, where light slipped through. The storm howled through the night, but inside the small wooden house there was warmth and silence. The alien woman sat close to the fire, her child now breathing softly in her arms. She had not slept in days, yet her eyes refused to close. Fear lingered in every shadow, whispering that safety could vanish in a single breath. The human man had given them blankets, food, and fire. He asked for nothing in return. He spoke little, only moving quietly around the house, but his silence was not cold. It was steady, like a shield against the storm. Still, she could not stop the doubt in her heart. At dawn, the wind softened, and pale light spread across the frozen land. The woman dared to hope the worst was behind them, but the world outside had eyes, and those eyes soon turned toward the little house. Neighbors had seen her. They had seen the alien mother stumble to the 18th door. They whispered among themselves, anger rising like smoke. In their eyes, she was a danger, a burden, someone who would bring trouble. Soon, footsteps crunched across the snow, voices carried on the cold air. Inside, the woman stiffened. She pulled the child closer, her ears twitching at the sound of angry murmurs. The man noticed and walked to the window. His jaw tightened as he saw the small crowd gathering beyond his gate. "They know you're here," he said quietly, his voice calm but his eyes sharp. Her heart raced. "They will come. They will take my child," she whispered, fear trembling through her words. Her kind had been chased from so many places, beaten, cast out, left to die. She knew what human fear could become when turned into hate. The man shook his head. "Not while you're under my roof." His tone carried a strength she did not expect. A loud knock rattled the door, harsh and demanding. "Open up!" a voice shouted. "We know what you've done. You've taken one of them inside." The woman flinched, curling around her child like a shield. The man did not move at first. He simply stared at the door, the firelight flickering against his face. Then he stepped forward and opened it a crack. 3 neighbors stood outside, their faces hard with cold and anger. "You cannot keep her," one hissed. "She is not one of us. She will bring sickness or worse. She and her kind are cursed. Throw her out before it's too late." The man's hand gripped the edge of the door, his knuckles white. He spoke slowly, each word clear. "She has a child. He is freezing, starving. Would you have me throw them into the snow to die?" The neighbors exchanged uneasy glances, but their leader sneered. "Better them than us. If you keep her, the whole colony will know. They will call you traitor. They will cast you out." The woman heard every word. Her heart sank. Shame burned her skin even hotter than the fire. She whispered brokenly, "Please, I can leave. Just let the child rest a little longer. I'll go." But the man turned to her, his eyes steady. "No," he said firmly. "You will not go. Not while the storm rages outside." He shut the door in the faces of his neighbors. The thud echoed through the small house like a hammer. The woman stared at him in shock. Her own people had abandoned her. 17 doors had turned her away, yet this human stood against his own kind. For her, fear still pressed at the walls, whispers of the angry crowd growing outside. The woman clutched her child tighter. Her mind was torn between running and staying, between survival and trust. But one thing was clear. Stepping through the 18th door had not only given her shelter, it had also placed her in the middle of something bigger, something dangerous. And in that moment she realized, safety was never simple. Not in this world, not with fear waiting outside the door. The fire burned low, sending soft light across the wooden walls. The alien woman sat close, her child pressed against her chest. Her eyes flicked again and again toward the door, afraid the angry neighbors might return. Her body trembled, not only from the cold that lingered in her bones, but from the fear that danger waited just outside. The human man moved calmly, as though the threats meant nothing. He stoked the fire, poured warm broth into a bowl, and placed it near her. His silence puzzled her. He did not ask where she came from or why she had been abandoned. He did not demand payment. He simply acted as if protecting her was natural. But she could not silence the questions in her mind. "Why?" she finally whispered, her voice hoarse. "Why risk angering your people for me? Why not close your door like the others?" The man paused. His hand rested on the wooden chair, his eyes lowered to the floor. For a long moment, he said nothing. The crackle of the fire filled the silence. Then he spoke, his voice quiet but heavy. "Because once, I was on the other side of the door too." Her eyes widened. She leaned forward, not sure she had heard him correctly. He looked at her now, his gaze sharp and full of memory. "Years ago, when I was young, the winter was just as cruel as this one. My family was gone, I was alone. I knocked on doors, 17 of them, just like you, and everyone shut in my face." Her breath caught. His words stabbed into her heart. She tightened her hold on her child, remembering the sting of rejection, the frozen silence, the hopeless weight. He had felt the same. He continued, his voice rough. "I nearly died that night. I collapsed in the snow, but an old woman, one stranger, opened her door. She saved me. She gave me bread, fire, and life. I swore that if I ever found another soul in the cold, I would do the same." The alien woman's throat ached. Head with emotion, she had not expected such truth from a human. She lowered her gaze, ashamed of her earlier suspicion. Yet she also understood now. His kindness was not blind. It was born from pain, from memory carved into his bones. She whispered, "Your people, they turned you away too?" He nodded slowly. "Fear makes people cruel. They would rather protect their comfort than risk their safety. But I will not be like them. If that means standing alone, so be it." Silence filled the room again, but it was different now. It was heavy with shared pain, shared scars. She looked at him, truly seeing him for the first time, not as a human stranger, but as someone who knew the bitter taste of rejection. The child stirred in her arms, letting out a small laugh in his sleep. It was the first sound of joy she had heard from him in weeks. Her heart tightened, her eyes burned. She pressed a kiss to his forehead, whispering thanks under her breath. The man watched quietly, his eyes softened. "Your child. He's strong. He will live." She blinked back tears, her voice trembled. "If not for you, he would not." He shook his head. "If not for that old woman, neither would I. She saved me, and through me, she saved you." His eyes flickered with something deeper, something unspoken. The alien woman felt warmth spread through her chest, not just from the fire, but from something far rarer. Understanding. In this human's house, in his story, she saw a reflection of her own suffering, and for the first time she dared to believe she was not alone. Outside, the storm raged still, and the colony whispered in anger. But inside these fragile walls, a secret had been shared, a bond had been formed, one built not on fear but on pain, compassion, and the fragile seed of trust. The storm outside finally began to quiet. The snow no longer screamed against the windows, only whispered softly. Inside the small house, the fire glowed warm, filling the room with gentle light. The alien woman sat close to it, her child bundled tightly in a blanket. The human man had gone to fetch more firewood from the back shed. She sat alone, listening to the crackle of the flames. For the first time in days, her body did not shake from the cold. For the first time, her child's breathing was steady. She touched his tiny hand and felt warmth slowly returning. Tears burned in her eyes. The door creaked, and the man returned, his arms full of wood. He set it down with a soft grunt and smiled faintly. "The storm will pass soon. You both will be safe," he said. His voice was calm, steady, like the fire itself. The child stirred and opened his eyes. For a moment the mother feared he would only cry as before, but instead he let out a small sound, something different. A little chuckle escaped his lips, weak but real. The woman froze, staring in disbelief. She had not heard her child laugh in weeks, not since before the hunger and cold had nearly broken them. Another small laugh followed, soft and innocent. Her chest tightened. A sob escaped her lips. She pressed her forehead against the child's, whispering, "You remember joy, little one. You still remember." The man crouched nearby, watching quietly. His eyes softened at the sight. "That's a good sign," he said gently. "Children know when they're safe." His laughter means hope has returned to him. The woman turned to him, her voice breaking. "Hope. I thought I had lost it forever." She held her child tighter, the sound of his giggles echoing in the small room like a song. For a moment it felt as if the world outside did not exist. The colony, the fear, the hatred, it all faded, leaving only this fragile piece, tea. The laughter of a child, the warmth of a fire, the quiet presence of a human who had chosen kindness, yet shadows still lingered in her heart. She lifted her eyes to the man. "They will not forgive you for this," she whispered. "The others, your people. They will come again. They will not allow me to stay." The man nodded slowly, his jaw tightened. "I know," he said simply, "but I've made my choice. Let them come. I will not turn you out." Her breath caught. His words held weight, a promise spoken without hesitation. She searched his face, looking for any sign of doubt, but found none. He meant every word. The child laughed again, louder this time. He reached a tiny hand toward the man, fingers curling in the air. The man blinked, surprised, then smiled faintly and extended his finger. The child grabbed it, giggling. The woman's heart ached at the sight. A strange warmth spread through her chest, stronger than before. The man was no longer only the one who had opened his door. He was becoming something more. Someone her child trusted, someone she wanted to trust too. But trust was dangerous. She had trusted before, and it had only brought her pain. She lowered her gaze, torn between fear and longing, between survival and the fragile seed of something new. Outside, faint voices stirred again, distant but growing. The colony had not forgotten. The woman's body stiffened. The man noticed and placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Do not fear," he said softly. "Your child's laughter is proof enough. We did right." Her eyes filled with tears. She nodded slowly, holding her child close. The storm of snow might be ending, but another storm was building outside their walls. Still, in that moment, with her child's laughter ringing in the air, she allowed herself to believe that not all humans were cruel, not all doors would remain closed, and for the first time in a lone EG time, she dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, there could be a future beyond fear. The day was calm, the storm had passed, but the air around the small wooden house felt heavy. The alien woman sensed it before she even heard the footsteps. Her child was resting peacefully in the blanket, but her heart refused to rest. Something was coming. The human man stood near the window, his shoulders tense. He had lived long enough among these people to know how quickly fear turned into anger, and he could feel that anger gathering now. Soon, the crunch of snow grew louder. Shadows moved outside the gate. Then came the voices, sharp and angry. "Open the door, we know she is inside." The woman gasped and held her child tighter. Her eyes darted toward the back of the house. "I should leave," she whispered urgently. "If I stay, they will turn on you. They will punish you." The man shook his head firmly. "No," he said, his voice steady. "Running will only prove their hate right. You will stay." A pounding shook the door. "You betray us all." One voice shouted, "You endanger the colony. Throw her out, or we will drag her out ourselves." The man stepped forward and opened the door wide. Cold air rushed inside, and with it the sight of half a dozen neighbors. Their faces were hard, twisted with fear and suspicion. "You would shelter one of them?" The leader spat, his finger pointing at the woman inside. "After all we've built, after all the danger her kind brings, you would risk us all for that creature." The alien woman's chest tightened. Her ears rang with the word creature. She pressed her child to her heart, trembling. Her instincts screamed at her to hide, to flee. But the man did not move aside. "She is not a danger," he said, his voice loud and clear. "She is a mother. A child nearly froze to death. Would you have me leave them in the snow?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd, but the leader's face darkened. "Mercy for her will mean death for us, Oda. Others will follow. They will see weakness in us. We cannot allow it." The man stepped out, standing tall at his own doorway. "Weakness is slamming a door on a mother's face," he said coldly. "Strength is opening it." The words struck the crowd. Some shifted uneasily, guilt flashing across their expressions, but others clenched their fists tighter, unwilling to bend. The alien woman watched, her heart pounding. She had never seen such defiance, never seen someone stand before many for the sake of one, especially for her. The leader snarled, "Then you choose them over us? You would rather be cast out than stand with your own people?" The man's jaw tightened, his eyes burned with quiet fire. "If standing with you means letting a child die, then yes, I stand apart." The air grew heavy. The crowd muttered angrily. Some shouted for her removal. Others stayed silent, torn between fear and shame. The woman rose shakily, clutching her child. Her lips parted and she whispered, "I never wanted trouble. If harm comes to you because of me, Her voice broke, but the man turned sharply, his voice cutting across hers. "No, this is not your burden. It is mine. This is my house, my fire, my choice, and I will not abandon it." For a long moment, no one moved. The cold wind bit at their faces, but the heat of the man's words lingered. Finally, the leader spat on the snow and growled, "You've made your choice, then live with it." Slowly the crowd began to scatter, though their glares promised this was not the end. The man closed the door and leaned against it, his breath heavy. The woman stood frozen, her child's small fingers clutching her collar, her eyes filled with tears. "Why?" she whispered again. "Why fight for me when it cost you everything?" The man looked at her, his expression tired but steady. "Because once no one fought for me," he said softly, "and I swore never to let it happen again." Her chest ached. Her fear had not vanished, but in its place something else began to grow, something stronger than she had ever known. For the first time in her life, she believed that perhaps not all doors led to rejection. Some led to courage, some led to hope. The night grew still, but the silence outside the house was not peace. It was heavy, tense, the kind that comes before a storm of men. The alien woman sat near the fire, clutching her child. Her eyes never left the door. Every creak of the wood, every whistle of the wind made her flinch. The human man, however, did not flinch. He moved calmly, checking the locks, placing another log on the fire. His face was steady, but his shoulders were tight. He knew the colony would not let this end quietly. The woman's voice trembled. "They will come back. I heard it in their eyes. They will not forgive you. They will destroy your home, maybe even you." He looked at her, his gaze firm. "Then let them come." His voice carried no fear, only resolve. Her chest tightened. She could not understand him. "Why do this? Why stand against your own people for me?" He paused, then picked up an old axe from beside the door. Its blade was worn, its handle scarred. It was not the weapon of a soldier, but of a survivor. He held it with steady hands. "Because there are times when a man must choose, fear or what is right. I choose what is right." The woman's heart pounded. His words carried a weight that shook her more than the storm ever had. She whispered, "And if they kill you?" He gave a faint, tired smile. "Then at least I will not die a coward." Before she could speak again, there was a sound outside, the crunch of many boots in the snow. The glow of torches flickered against the frosted windows. Voices murmured, louder and angrier than before. The man straightened, planting himself firmly at the door. "Stay by the fire. Hold your child close," he told her. His tone was not commanding, but protective. Her body trembled. She wanted to run, to beg him not to do this, but something in his presence stopped her. He was unmovable, like a wall of stone between her and the storm outside. The pounding began, hard and violent. "Open up," the leader's voice roared. "You defy us all. Hand her over or we will burn this house to the ground." The man lifted the axe, not in rage but in readiness. He opened the door wide and the night air rushed in. Outside, more than a dozen stood, their faces lit by torchlight, their eyes burning with fear, disguised as hate. He stepped forward, his voice rising above the wind. "You call yourselves strong, yet you threaten a child. You speak of safety, but you build it on cruelty. If you want them, you will have to pass through me." The crowd stirred, some shouting, some hesitating. The leader sneered, "One man cannot stand against us all." The human's eyes narrowed, his voice cut sharp through the air. "One man is all it takes when the rest have lost their courage." The words struck like a blow. The crowd faltered. Fear of him, fear of shame, warred inside their eyes. Some lowered their torches, uneasy, but the leader stepped forward, face twisted with rage. "You would fight us for her?" he hissed. "For that thing?" The man raised the axe higher, his stance unshaken. "For her, and for the child. Yes." The woman, watching from inside, felt her breath catch. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She had seen humans fight before, but never like this. Not for her, not for someone unwanted. The standoff stretched, silence heavy in the air. The firelight flickered against steel, against faces caught between fear and hate. Finally, one of the neighbors muttered, "This is madness. It's a mother and child, let them be." Another voice joined, "He's right. We turned them away. We should be ashamed." The leader's face twisted, but the crowd's anger was breaking. Cracks spreading through their unity. He shouted again, but fewer voices answered. The man did not lower his axe. He stood tall at his doorway, a single figure holding back many, and in that moment, the woman realized she was seeing something rare. "True courage," she whispered to her child, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Remember this, little one. Remember the human who stood when no one else did." The stand was not over. The danger was not gone, but for the first time the crowd saw that one man's defiance could silence many, and the woman saw that hope could be guarded not by walls or armies, but by the heart of a single human who refused to bend. The long night slowly faded into pale gray morning. The storm clouds drifted apart, and for the first time in days, the sun touched the snow. The cold was still sharp, but its grip was loosening. The alien woman stood at the window, her child pressed against her shoulder, watching the light spread across the frozen ground. Inside the house, silence reigned. The fire crackled softly. The man sat on a wooden stool with the axe still resting near his knee. He had not slept. His eyes were tired, but his back remained straight. He had spent the night guarding the door while the crowd outside argued, threatened, and finally faded into the shadows. The woman looked at him, her heart heavy. He had risked everything, his safety, his place among his own people, even his home, just to keep her and her child alive. She wanted to speak, to say something more than, "Thank you," but words were too small for the weight of her feelings. Outside, the village was quiet, yet the air carried tension. Whispers passed from house to house. Some said he was a fool, some said he was brave, others said nothing at all, ashamed of their own silence when they had closed their doors. The woman stepped closer to the man, her voice trembling. "They will not forget. They will come again, maybe worse than before." The man lifted his eye. His voice was low but steady. "Let them. They have already shown who they are. And I have shown who I am." His words struck her like a spark. For so long she had known only rejection. For so long she had believed no one would ever fight for her. But here was a human who had not only opened his door, but stood firm against an entire colony. The child stirred and gave a small laugh, his tiny fingers reaching for the light through the window. That sound melted her fear like the sun melting frost. She held him close, whispering, "See, little one, the cold is breaking." The man glanced at them, a faint smile pulling at the edge of his lips. "He's stronger now. The laughter will stay." She turned to him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You saved him. You saved me." He shook his head. "No, I only kept a promise. One made long ago when I was the one in the snow." His gaze hardened, but his voice softened. "I will not let history repeat itself." The woman's chest ached. She felt something growing inside her, not just gratitude, not just relief, but a bond stronger than fear. She had walked through 17 doors that slammed shut and found only rejection. But at the 18th door, she had found a man who gave more than shelter. He gave her a reason to believe again. The sun rose higher, casting light across the snow. In that brightness, the world looked less cruel. The harsh edges of ice softened. The air, though still cold, carried the promise of change. Yet the danger was not gone. She knew the whispers outside would not stay whispers forever. The neighbors' fear still lingered, waiting for a spark to become fire. Still, as she stood in that little wooden house, she felt something she had never dared before, hope for tomorrow. The man finally rose, picking up the axe and placing it back by the wall. He stretched his tired arms, then looked at her and the Kong. Child, his eyes held quiet strength. The cold has broken, the hardest night is behind us. Now we face what comes next. Her lips trembled, but this time when she whispered, her voice carried both fear and courage. We will face it together. Outside, the snow glistened under the sun. Inside, the fire burned warm, and though the world beyond the door was still uncertain, within those walls something stronger than cold or fear had been born. Something that even the harshest winter could not destroy. The sun climbed higher, scattering the last of the storm. The snow still lay thick, but it no longer felt like a grave. It sparkled under the morning light. Inside the small wooden house, the fire burned strong, filling the room with warmth that had once seemed impossible. The alien woman sat near the hearth, her child curled against her chest. His breathing was steady, his cheeks full of color again. Every small laugh he made was like a bell, soft and bright. It was the sound of life refusing to die. The man moved about quietly, mending the firewood pile, straightening the chairs. He worked as if the house was not just his anymore, but theirs. When his eyes met hers, there was no awkwardness, only something new. A silent understanding. She finally spoke, her voice soft. 17 doors closed, and I thought the world had no place for us. But then there was yours. Why? He looked at her for a long moment before answering. Because every person deserves a chance to live. Because no child should be punished for being born. And because I remember what it felt like when the world turned away. His voice was steady, but beneath it lay a deep wound that time had not erased. Tears gathered in her eyes. She looked at her child and whispered, "Then this house, this fire, it is more than shelter. It is a beginning." The man nodded, his jaw tightened, but there was the faintest smile at the corner of his mouth. "If you choose to stay, then let it be your home." Her breath caught. The word home, chewed inside her like a song she had never learned but always longed for. For years, she had wandered with only rejection. For years, she had held her child and wondered if tomorrow would ever come. And now, here was a human offering her not just survival, but belonging. She lowered her head, voice trembling. "I will stay, if you will have us." The man stepped closer. He placed his hand gently on the child's blanket. "Then you are not strangers anymore," he said. "Not guests, not burdens, family." Her tears spilled freely now, but they were not tears of despair. They were tears of release, of something heavy finally falling away. She clutched her child and let the warmth of the words sink into her heart. Outside, the colony still whispered. Some still feared her, some still despised her, but others had seen the man's defiance. Others had heard the child's laughter. Slowly, quietly, shame began to touch them. Perhaps not all would change, but some had begun to doubt the cruelty of their own hearts. The woman did not know what the future would bring. She did not know if peace would last or if new storms would rise, but she knew one truth. She was no longer alone. She had found a human who opened his door when all others had closed. And in that act, he had given her more than life. He had given her hope. That night, as the fire glowed and the snow outside glistened under the stars, she sat beside him, her child asleep between them. For the first time, she felt safe enough to close her eyes without fear, and as she drifted into sleep, one thought echoed in her mind, gentle and steady. 17 doors had closed, but the 18th gave her everything, not just warmth, not just shelter, but a home.